Welcome to English 4E. This is class 15, and we are working on part 3 of the culminating assignment, and I am Jillian Percy. Here is my contact information. Facebook and YouTube are both capital G, capital P, ERCY, space, capital W, AHSA. You can email me at jillian.percy@nnecschools.org, or you can call while I'm on the air at 1-800-465-7144, 737-4017. Send assignments to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. Always include your name and the course and the assignment name and number. Okay, so today's work, we are going to learn different ways to create an interesting ending, apply one choice to create an end to your story, understand ways to revise a story, revise the rough copy of a demo story, apply revision techniques to your own story, understand how to edit conventions, and practice editing conventions. Okay, so first of all, this is kind of a little acronym to help you remember. The ways to revise your rough draft is often known as ARMS. So A stands for add more information. New words, phrases, or sentences can be added. R stands for remove. You can remove unnecessary elements. Could be sentences or phrases that are off topic, repetitive, or just not needed. M is move it into a better order. Words, clauses, and sentences can be organized in a different way. And then substitute. Words, clauses, and sentences can be changed or substituted. Okay, adding to your work. You can always add more details about the setting, the character's looks or their thoughts, the actions or the events. You can use sensory details such as appearance, smell, taste, feel, or sounds. You can also add more dialogue, not pointless dialogue like hello, but dialogue that helps reveal a character's thoughts, feelings, motivations, fears, or worries. You could also add transition words and phrases that help convey sequence like then or finally, or you can have introductory phrases that show shifts in time or place. Okay, so here is an example of adding description about like how a character looks, a room or a building, landscape, individual actions. Let's say in your rough draft, you have Taylor insulted my girlfriend. I got mad and swung at him. We fought, but I won. So I just realized that kind of dived in. In case you weren't sure, yeah, last class we did the rough draft. Now we're working on the revising draft. And this is where a lot of people aren't sure what to revise. And they often just kind of skip over that and start doing editing where they're looking at like spelling and capitalization. So I'm trying to like kind of do a deep dive onto revision here. So if you have something very short, Taylor insulted my girlfriend. I got mad and swung at him. We fought, but I won. Now, you're telling me the bare bones of what happened. But we want to flush this out, right? Just like I wouldn't want an umbrella that had the frame and didn't have the cover, we want to add to this too. So first of all, I'm going to start by giving some description of where and when you are. It was Sunday morning. I was having a laid back morning. I made myself some pancakes and coffee. After that, I was playing Fortnite. I was partway through a game when I heard the knock at the door. It was Trevor. Okay, now I could go on to describe Trevor. He's one of my cousins. Not one of my favorites, but he is all right. He looked kind of angry, but he always looks that way. Now I can add some description of the main character's place. Trevor, oh, I changed too. I put Trevor here and Taylor up here. Okay, I'm gonna, wait. Hang on a second. Sorry, that happens sometimes. That's why I don't usually go in there, but all right. For some reason, I forgot and called him Taylor up here and Trevor down there. Okay, there we go. Trevor walked in and looked around. I could tell he was wondering where to sit. My laundry was on one side of the couch, and a bunch of snacks were on the other side. Clearly, the middle was my spot. I went into my bedroom and dragged an old wooden chair out. It wasn't pretty, but it was sturdy. So already I've added, like, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I've added 15 sentences and I haven't even got to where they've had the fight. So a lot of times if people are feeling like, oh, my copy's too short, it's often because they kind of dived right in and gave us the bare bones. So go back and add some more details so it kind of fill it out. Okay. Other things you can add how the main character or some of the other characters feel, but don't just tell us, oh, I felt scared, I felt sad. Remember, we're talking about how to show things with your descriptions. So here's an example. We were just teenagers, and it started when Alex dared me to go up to that abandoned house. Rumor has it that the guy that lived there killed his wife, and her ghost still haunts that place. The story made my skin crawl the first time I heard it, and it was crawling again now. What would her ghost look like? Oh, would her ghost look like her when she died? Could she hurt me? My heart was racing, but I tried to keep my voice calm as I spoke. That won't bother me none, sure. Now, the idea I'm trying to get across with what I was showing was the skin crawling is like him feeling kind of spooked. His heart's racing because he's feeling a little scared. He's struggling to keep his voice calm. So I'm trying to show it with details about the person rather than just saying he was scared, right? Okay. The other big thing, and this is really kind of new for us, we haven't really practiced this much, is dialogue. Try to remember to have the characters talk to each other. Also, when you're doing that, remember you can just start a new paragraph whenever the speaker changes. So here's an example. My boss was angry. Look, David, I told you I needed that report for the meeting this afternoon. There wasn't a whole lot to say. He had told me, but it had taken a lot longer than expected to get the report written. I know, it's almost ready, I muttered. Oh, is that what you want me to tell the department manager? It's almost ready. He wasn't yelling, but his voice was sarcastic. I gulped. I promise I will have it ready before the meeting. Let me get the first part to you so you can read it. He sighed. I guess that'll have to do. Next month's report need to be on time though, or I am going to write you up. Now, I could have just tried to summarize this by saying, oh, I was late with the report. My boss was mad. But see how much richer this is. I have a better sense of what the boss is. Like he's not, he's not wrong. He does need the report. And I have a better sense of who this guy is, right? He may be a little bit somebody who promises things he can't necessarily deliver. So I've conveyed a lot more with the dialogue than I would have conveyed by just summarizing. Okay. Now you may have a character or a character who's in a situation where they're by themselves, or maybe your entire story is really only about one main character. And then you can have them thinking about the problem or the solution to themselves. And a lot of times we put the thinking in italics to show your thoughts. So I'm going to kind of read this to show you what I mean. I couldn't stop worrying about what was going to happen to my family while I was gone. Would my wife be able to pay the bills without my paycheck? Was my baby girl going to go hungry? And that guy across the street, Jake, was he going to be hassling my wife while I was gone? Around and around my thoughts spun. So this part is where he's actually thinking. It's like these thoughts are kind of running through his head. So I'm going to highlight them and then see the I here up for the typography. If I go to italicize, it kind of slants them all. And that is sometimes like a little hint to people who are reading that that is thoughts. I could also change the typography if I wanted to. I could unbold it. That might make it more obvious. Or I could even, if I want to be really, really clear, change it to a different font. I don't really like that one. Let me see if another one will work. Okay. So that kind of helps make it clear to the reader that something is wrong. Doesn't like this. Oh, no, I don't want harassing. Hassling. See if I add an E there, if that'll make. Nope, still not happy with that. I'm thinking of the word like don't hassle. Um, for some reason it says I'm wrong. I'm not sure why. Probably spelling's been wrong there. Okay. You can also add some backstory to characters. It is a short story, but there's nothing wrong with listing something that kind of conveys, hey, these two people have had a history before this moment. So, for example, he was okay, I guess, but somehow we've never gotten along. He always seemed to find some way to put me down or make a joke about me. Small stuff, but it bugged me. And then you could go on to whatever's happening currently, but it gives the reader a little bit of a sense of the history, right? Same thing over here. She was friendly, but she stood up my best friend once, and I never quite trusted her after that. He was a really good guy, but she decided to go with some flashy guy she just met. It didn't work out, and secretly, I was glad for my friend's sake. So now we know something about the girl, but we also know something about this guy, right? He's a little bit jealous for his friend, a little bit protective, holds a grudge. Okay, with the ending, I was going to talk about like different ways that you can end something, but I kind of want to talk more generally about your ending, okay? It can be tempting when ending a short story to just stop writing. Like a lot of times you get through a problem or you solve the conflict and they just stop. But it leaves a very disappointed and frustrated reader, okay? You've got to make sure they've got some clue what the main character is feeling and some sense of what is happening next to them, like next in like their life. Have all the loose ends of the story been wrapped up? Or have you left some of the secondary characters at odds, so to speak, with no idea of what's happened to them? Has the conflict or the problem been resolved in a satisfactory way? And by satisfactory, I mean like to the reader, right? A lot of times the writer is happy, but your readers are an important part of the process too. So the biggest thing is most people race through the end. Try to slow it down and wrap up the loose ends. So, for example, this would be a common way to end a story. That was the scariest day ever. Okay, when you do that, you're telling me, you're not showing me. We've talked about that a little while. How can you show that this day or this event was scary? So here I'm going to kind of do a little like memory piece. It's been 20 years since the day I went into that old house, but sometimes in my nightmares, I can still smell the moldy smell behind me and the whisper light touch of a ghostly hand. Even in my dreams, I scream. On nights like that, I turn on all the lights and go downstairs for a coffee. I won't be sleeping anymore that night. Then I sit and watch TV and try not to remember. Okay, so here I'm sort of trying to recreate how that event has affected them and also maybe kind of make it sound a little bit scary for the reader too. So think about ways to end the story without just going, oh, that's it, the end. All right. Um, let's see what's next. Okay. The next part is moving your words, your phrases, sentences, and paragraphs. Okay. So here I've got a little landscape for visual showing that you can move things around and improve the look of things, right? I could put that right up front. I could put this over here. By the same token, when you're doing your story, you can play around with things a little bit and decide what looks best. All right, so paragraphs. Maybe you originally started with a paragraph on the setting, and after revising, you move it to the second or third paragraph because it seems better there. Sentences. Sometimes we decide a certain sentence needs to move to the end of a paragraph, or that our closing sentence actually works better as an introduction. Feel free to move things around as you need. Words and phrases. Sometimes we realize that a word or a phrase is too weak for the middle of an event and needs to go at the beginning of things as they're still wrapping up. Like if I say somebody's irritated in their middle of like throwing a fist punch, they're probably past irritated. Irritated might have been when the fight started. Now I need maybe a different word, okay? Maybe a certain word reveals too much about a surprise ending. So you save it for after the surprise has been revealed. Okay. Removing unneeded elements. Okay, this is kind of the hardest part, I think. Um, Dialogue that doesn't add to the character or the action. We've touched on this before, but sometimes people add dialogue to the story because they're supposed to, but it's kind of wooden, like, hello, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? And it's not that we don't say that in real life, but writing is not us just like typing down everything that happens because a lot of times it just doesn't translate very well to the written page. So when you're writing, you don't want to just make sure it sounds like how people talk. You want to make sure it's still adding something to the story. Is it telling me more about the character? Is it establishing something about their relationship? Or is it giving you a certain kind of feeling about things? So dialogue that doesn't do those things probably needs to be cut or transformed. The other thing is sometimes people can put description that goes on too long, especially here because we're only writing a short story. So, for example, sometimes people want to use every bit of their brainstorming. So they add too many details to their description of a setting, character, or events. Also, some of us are just naturally a bit more talkative or long-winded, hint, hint, like me, and we just naturally add lots of details when we write. And in a short story, we may need to cut out the ones that really aren't that important. So here is an example next. If you remember on Thursday, I started working on my version of the story called Larissa's Journey. And so here is what I started writing. Oh, okay. Larissa's Journey. Larissa grumbled under her breath as she tightened the saddle on her horse. They were supposed to hit the road hours ago. She eyed the sun gleaming brightly overhead with its noontime heat and cursed softly. It had taken so much longer to gather up supplies for this journey than she had thought. Hiring fit companions to join her on the journey had been harder than she had expected as well. She had envisioned her crew as young, fit, experienced as both fighters and guides. But since she was a relatively unknown expedition leader, none of the unemployed guardsmen who met that criteria trusted her enough to hire on, nor was the pay she could offer enough to overcome their reluctance. Instead, she got the misfits. She resisted the urge to look over her head at the crew, her crew, straggling along behind her. Larissa had a suspicion that the look on her face would make her feelings all too clear. No point scaring off her team before they even left town. Truthfully, she didn't even have to look. She already could hear Eden's quick footsteps just behind her, eager to be on his way to his first mission. Behind him came the measured steps of their guide, Farron. He seemed competent and had come highly recommended. He had certainly been expensive enough to hire, but she had to have someone who knew the land the way he did. And then behind him came Ike, walking in slow, measured steps of an old warrior who was in no hurry if no one was threatening to kill him. Baylor was up ahead, getting the rest of the horses saddled and packed. Baylor was a bit of a mystery to her. She couldn't figure out why he'd signed on with her. He seemed good with the horses, fit, with a friendly manner. Larissa was surprised he hadn't already hired on with a more experienced crew. When she had asked him about it, he had simply shrugged and said, I need to take a break for a few months, and when I was ready to sign on, no one needed a groom like me. They already had men with them who could do the job themselves. At the time, Larissa had just been grateful. Finally, oh, that was the beginning of a new paragraph. Hang on. I'm gonna just put that there. And you can see I'm doing an indent so it's obvious. Finally, Larissa managed to get the crew on the road out of town with a minimum of delays. The road was wide and easy to travel, as the city had wanted to make sure wagons could enter the town easily to bring their food and wares. The day was hot but pleasant. Larissa spent the first few hours out of town in a contented calm. The horses clipping along on the road was soothing, and everyone was quiet for a while. She assumed because they were also glad to be on the road. They took a brief stop on the side of the road for some lunch and to stretch out their legs. Eden had looked a bit weary, but when she asked him quietly if he needed a break, he assured her that he was fine. She didn't bother asking the others. They were old enough and confident enough to tell her if they needed to stop. She was hoping to get to Arborgate before nightfall, as they had some reasonable inns there with decent food and comfortable beds. Now, remember we were talking the other day that we needed around 750 words. So I'm not necessarily going to go through and count every single word. What I'm going to do is take one sentence, count it, and then multiply. So here's an example of what I would do. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Okay, so 24 times however many lines I've got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Is it 21? My brain has gone dead again. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10. Yeah, we're gonna go with 21. So at this point, I'm at 10. So I'm gonna say I've got about 210, maybe 240. I'm just going to put that on here so you kind of know. This is my estimate. I haven't counted every single word, and I don't plan to. Okay. Now I've got a problem here because if there's 240 words on this page and 240 words on my last page, I've just spent 500 words and I haven't even got them anywhere doing anything. Okay. So I need to cut. This is where we're talking about removing. I need to remove a whole bunch of my description. I've got too much description. Okay. This is not an easy thing for me. None of what I've written is bad, but it's moving way too slowly for a short story. Maybe fine for like a novel. If I'm going to have room for more exciting scenes later, I'm going to have to condense these pages and try to make it shorter while still kind of trying to hold on to the same feel. So I'm going to try and cut the scene in town and just start with them right already on the road, right? And she can maybe remember bits and pieces or something. It's a more exciting place to start the story. And I think that I can capture some of the most important information that I was trying to convey. Okay. So here is my revised version. Larissa cast a frustrated look at the noon sky above her. It had taken forever to get her new crew out of town. It had taken twice as long as she expected to get everything done, from getting their food and water supplies to securing the horses to rounding up her crew. Hiring fit companions to join her on the journey had been harder than expected, too. Few experienced soldiers or guardsmen, sorry, is all we're in there, trusted her enough to hire on, since they knew nothing about her. She had filled her crew with those who were willing to take the risk. Slightly behind her, Larissa could hear Eden humming some tune to himself. He was the youngest of the crew at 19, but she had trusted him as he'd grown up in Kingstown as she had. He could handle a sword even if he wasn't a soldier. Farron, their guide, had dropped back and was chatting with Ike. She couldn't quite hear Ike's replies, which was not unexpected, as he was one of the quietest men she'd ever met. His gray hair and scars testified to the fact that he was a good fighter. Poor fighters don't live long enough to go gray. Farron did not seem to mind the lack of response and went on talking happily. Baylor, their crew, was right behind Eden. She was surprised he was not already hired on with a more experienced crew, but he said that he'd been injured and had to take a break to heal. By the time he was better, his spot had been taken. He seemed strong and capable, and there was something reassuring about his plain face, with his warm brown hair and eyes and his easy smile. They took a brief stop on the side of the road for some lunch and to stretch out their legs. She kept it short because she was hoping to get to the inns of Arborgate before nightfall. So you can see that some of these sentences I just didn't even touch. I liked them. Seemed fine. Other times I threw out whole paragraphs, whole chunks because they weren't needed. And to be honest, I'm probably going to need to go through this one more time and make it even shorter to be able to get some of the stuff I want in later. Now, I do want to point out, although it says like a page and a half, I don't mind if you write more than that. It's just I wouldn't expect you to hand me in like 10 pages if I've got a page and a half. So you do need to be mindful of how much room you've got to talk, basically. Okay. The pages I'm working with are probably much shorter than your pages. I've said this. I do have some more pages. I started kind of writing it, but the same problem is happening, which is I'm kind of long-winded and I would need to cut those down severely. If we've got extra time at the end, I can show them to you guys and we can kind of figure out what revisions they need. Okay. You can also polish up your words. They didn't mention this one, but I think it's kind of an important one. Remember that you can use synonyms to replace ordinary words like pretty with beautiful, magnificent, awesome, gorgeous, or stunning, especially if you're using the word pretty over and over again. Like, oh, she was a pretty girl. Oh, it was a pretty day. Oh, it was, and it gets, I don't know, it begins to be e- boring, I guess, because it's the same word over and over again. Now, in conversation, we often use ordinary words, but we also use our voice, our expressions, our gestures to add emphasis and extra meaning to the words we use. But with your verbs, a lot of times we go with simple ones like went or said. But if we change the word went with things like raced, trudged, sauntered, creeped, those more vivid verbs can help bring a stronger picture to your reader. So take a look at your verbs and see if you're using ones that are really conveying as much information as you can. And then looking at your adjectives and adverbs. In conversation, we often skip using adjectives and adverbs. Sometimes they can feel kind of overly dramatic or sound as if we're bragging or like we're in a movie or something. But again, in writing, effective adjectives and adverbs can make a big difference. Did the detective walk in confidently or sleepily? Is the dog big and ferocious, or is he cute and cuddly? So on the next page, I've got an example. So here is one that does not have adjectives and adverbs. And here is one with adjectives and adverbs. I actually find it kind of hard. It was tricky trying to write without ever using an adjective or adverb. So here's what I've got. On Monday, Brian woke up. He was tired. He walked to work. It was a day. When he got to his workplace, his boss yelled. He said that Brian's work was done, but he could not explain why. Brian was confused by this conversation. He asked his boss to underline the parts. His boss turned red and stormed out of the office. Stormed out of the office. Um, you can see there are parts that just don't even make any sense because without an adjective describing what's going on, you're missing some crucial information. So here's how the same paragraph sounds, but I've added a few adjectives and adverbs, and it just kind of makes everything so much more understandable. On Monday, Brian woke up late. He was very tired. He walked slowly to work. It was a bright, sunny day. When he got to his horrible workplace, his boss yelled loudly. He said that Brian's work was done badly, but he could not explain why. Brian was confused by this difficult conversation. Carefully, he asked his boss to underline the worst parts. Sorry, I forgot the word parts here. His boss turned bright red and stormed out of the office angrily. Okay. So things like he said that Brian's work was done doesn't even make any sense, but Brian's work was done badly. Okay, that makes sense, right? Um, things like woke up late, right? He walked slowly to work. It was a bright, sunny day. That kind of changes things from what you hear here. So keep that in mind. If your story seems a little bit, if you're short on words and it doesn't seem vivid enough, then adjectives and adverbs are a place to start. Here's an example. This is from a food blog um, using kind of the same sort of boring words over and over again, and then a different version where they use more imaginative words. So, New York's Indian cuisine scene is full of delicious food. Restaurants like Milan have chicken tandoori and vegetable fritters that are so tasty. Visitors will absolutely enjoy them. Daba has paneer biryani that your taste buds will enjoy, and one of the best tasting shrimp curries in the state. Okay, so things like delicious, tasty, and enjoy are a bit overused, especially for a food blog. Okay, so here it's been rewritten in better language. Okay, New York's food scene pulls from every country in the world, and nothing exemplifies this better than the city's Indian cuisine. Milan serves a crispy, buttery naan to accompany dishes that pop with flavor, like creamy chicken tandoori, where the flavors mix together so well that not a single spice dominates the harmonious balance. Just down the road, Daba's Biryani offers a cooler, more delicate flavor for those who prefer the spice toned down. Now, because they've been forced to reach for more specific um, words, it's also created better writing in general because they had to really think more about what they were doing. And I think you'll find for yourself that as you begin to look at more unusual words, it's going to kind of nudge you forward into using more creative and imaginative writing. At least I find it really affects me that way. Um, Here they say the second example's word swaps are more specific and vivid than those from the first example, and they make it so that every sentence brings novelty to the blog, a stronger sensory experience, a better awareness of what these restaurants are like, and a more informative and entertaining experience for the reader. Okay, once you are finally happy with the bulk of your story, it's time to move on to the editing stage. I want to point out, though, please don't skip the revision part and just move to the editing. A lot of people do that. They don't really make any big changes to their words or their paragraphs. They just cross off a few spelling mistakes and move on. That's really not the kind of revisions we're looking for. So I've provided some pretty detailed examples of how you can do revisions. And I do ask you to take that seriously and please spend a bit of time doing the revisions for your story. As well, before you move on to editing, think about, does your story make sense? Is there anything confusing? Does it flow well or does it seem choppy? Did you remember to use paragraphs? That's huge. A page and a half with no paragraphs is going to be hard to read. Has it got a setting where it is clear what the time and place is? Do the characters all have names and hopefully at least some description of them? Is there any obvious problem to be solved? Have you just described things, but there's no problem? Are there obstacles that get in the way? Hopefully, we want that to happen, right? Can be small obstacles. Does the ending include a solution to the problem? You don't want to just end the story because, oh, well, I've got to a page and a half, so I'm done. You want to make sure you actually wrap up the problem and provide a solution. Okay. So just like we use the acronym ARMS to help us do the revising, we can use the acronym CUPS to help us with doing our editing. So the C stands for capitalization. Check that you have capitals where you should and none where they do not belong. U is for usage. Usage is a huge category that involves all the different elements of grammar that should be followed. As we keep going through the course, you'll I think feel more confident about that category. Punctuation, check that you've used punctuation marks correctly. Spelling, check for both misspelled and misused words. Keep in mind the most commonly confused words. Okay. Capitalization rules. The word I is always capitalized. You'd be surprised how often I still have people putting a lowercase I there. Remember, it's a person. And just like your name has a capital letter at the beginning, the word I would also have a capital letter. Okay. Even when it is part of a contraction like I'm, I'll, I've, or I'd, sometimes people forget they'll put the I here, but when they do the contraction, they don't remember to use the capital I. It's still the same person, so you still want to have a capital letter. The beginning of a sentence is always capitalized. However, no capitals are needed after a comma in the middle of a sentence. Names and titles start with a capital letter, and quotations start with a capital letter. Usage. Usage is a huge issue, and it can relate to so many grammar topics. But here are some common usage errors to look out for at this point. Singular nouns must have a, an, or the in front of them, even if they have adjectives in front of the noun as well. I saw brown dog is incorrect in English. Even though it's perfectly understandable, it's not correct grammatically. I saw a brown dog, or I saw the brown dog. Okay. Subject verb agreement. Singular nouns must use singular verbs. He runs quickly. Plural nouns have to use plural verbs. They run quickly. Some other common usage errors to look out for: run-on sentences. I bought groceries. I also got the car washed. Okay, so that is not correct. It's two sentences squashed into one. Right here between the two, I would need to put a period and split it up. Incomplete sentences: walking down the street. Who's walking down the street? I don't know. Or what? Maybe it's an elephant walking down the street. I don't know what it is. Also, we talked the other day about irregular adjectives and adverbs that get mixed up. He wanted that toy bad. Incorrect. He wanted that toy badly is correct. So those are some examples of some of the usage errors that we should be mindful of at this point in the course. Okay. Punctuation rules. There are a lot of rules to go over, but I'm going to assume at this point that most people know the basic ones, right? So I'm just going to focus on the most common errors that I see in the assignments that get handed into me. So first, people using a comma instead of a period at the end of a sentence. You cannot join two sentences with a comma. You can't. Hang on a second. If you're wanting to do that, you have to add a coordinating conjunction or a subordinating conjunction. So here I have things like, I like apples, comma, but I hate pears. I'm going to kind of just, well, okay, good. But I hate pears. So the comma alone can't do it, but the comma with the conjunction can do it. After I eat, I can play outside. Now, here is where I think people get confused, because the conjunction is over here at the front instead of the middle, so it's not obvious. But it is still what is joining these two sentences together, even if it's doing it from the front. But I know sometimes it's confusing because it looks to somebody, if they're not paying attention to the conjunction, like it got joined with the comma, but it didn't. Occasionally I get people using a comma like spice, and they just kind of throw one in every few words because they know they're supposed to use commas, but they're not sure where. So they're just hoping that it's kind of working out. Okay. Try not to do that. It actually gets kind of confusing to read because sometimes I'm not sure, are those meant to be periods? What's going on with that? The other big one is I find people not really being sure how to use an apostrophe correctly. So remember, an apostrophe is not a comma. It doesn't sit down at the bottom. It sort of hangs up in the air like a hat on a hat hook. So first of all, one thing is people forget to use the apostrophe with contractions. Like they'll write I'll but forget the apostrophe, or can't but forget the apostrophe. The other big thing is sometimes people use an apostrophe before an S, but it's not needed. Like if you're making a noun plural, like cup to cups, student to students, you don't need an apostrophe S, okay? Because apostrophe S shows belonging, and all you're trying to show is plural. Having said that, the opposite problem happens as well. Sometimes people forget to use the apostrophe when it's needed to show belonging. So for example, if I just had this, it is John's house, that doesn't make any sense. Do I mean like there's a bunch of guys named John living there? If I want to show that it belongs to a guy named John, I have to put an apostrophe S. Hang on. Looks like part of my page has gone off. Oh, I hate when that happens. Hang on a second. Sorry, I had to switch programs partway through this. And that, okay. And so that meant things kind of got dropped off somehow. Sometimes, okay, when you have a plural noun and you want to show belonging, you've got your plural like teachers, and then you put the apostrophe after the S to show that you understand that it's a plural. That is probably the trickiest one. If you have had problems with apostrophes Every time you're writing, I would just kind of go through and take a look at your apostrophes and see if you're using them correctly. All right, where are we at here? Common spelling mistakes. Okay, most times people are using spell check, which is totally fine. I'm absolutely fine with that. However, keep in mind it will not catch everything. And one of the biggest things it doesn't catch is, remember how we talked about homophones, words that sound the same, but they mean something different. So one of the most common ones is to, spelled T-O, and to, spelled T-O-O. The one spelled T-O is what we use to show direction, like he is going to the store. The one that's spelled T-double-O is trying to get across the idea of also, like you need to bring water to, or I want to go to the movies too. And that one has to have the double O. The other big confusion I get over words for that are homophones is their, T-H-E-I-R, and their, T-H-E-R-E. And sometimes you'll get, there's one more that sounds the same. I don't find it's confused as often, but it can be. Their, which is they, and are, the word are, contracted to be the word there. So the first there shows location. The park is over there. I always picture like there and where, right? They're both showing locations. So I would spell there, this kind of there, the same way I would spell where. This other one, T-H-E-I-R, this one shows belonging or ownership, right? Like they will bring the dog back to their house. And what I've always heard is, see the little eyes like a person? The person is showing you that they belong. This house belongs to them. Okay, some of the other homophones or near homophones that it will not necessarily correct is things like right and right, R-I-G-H-T, and W-R-I-T-E, bear and bear, accept and accept, than and then, and week and week. So if you're not sure of those, go ahead and check them. Remember how we talked, I believe we talked about this, how to check them in the dictionary thesaurus. And you can check their meaning to make sure that it's the right meaning for what you were aiming for. Okay. It's funny. I have fixed this a few times, but I have deliberately left mistakes in there, but I was trying to take away the little spell check helpers showing you some of the mistakes. Now, there are spelling mistakes in here, but there are also other mistakes in here. So look at the first one. However, as the sun was gradually getting lower in the sky, Larissa realized that they weren't going to make it to town as she had hoped. Now it's warning you that gradually is wrong. And if I click on it, it'll tell me the right one. I'm going to underline it to make sure that I've got my 10. Do you see any other problems in the sentence? Okay. The one problem, I don't know if people noticed it, but this is the wrong sun. Okay. That sun is like a child. The sun that they're talking about should be S-U-N. So see what I was talking about in terms of it didn't catch that as a spelling mistake because they're both real words. It's not spelled wrong. It's just the wrong word for that sentence. They weren't going to make it to the town as she had hoped. That all looks as she has hoped. Huh. No. So far we've been talking past tense, was, realized, weren't, has needs to get changed to past tense as well. Needs to become had. I'm going to underline that to show that I've changed it. She began discreetly checking out the sides of the road, looking for possible paths that might lead to a more sheltered clearing out of the way of the other travelers. Okay, so first of all, it needs a comma here. I don't know if I put that there. Clearing is spelled wrong. It should have EA instead of EE. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw that Baylor was doing the same thing. She slowed her horse to come into stride with Farron's and nodded at him. Okay, slow. Just like in the rest of the paragraph, it's in the past tense. I've got to say she slowed, right? ED to make it past tense. Her horse to come into stride with Farron's. Farron's? Is there more than one Farron? No, so I need an apostrophe. This is a funny one. I'm trying to show that she's coming in to start with Farron's horse, and it's common to drop the word horse, but I think it's confusing here. So I'm going to add it back in so people know what I'm talking about, right? Farron owns the horse. I don't think we will make the town. Okay, what's wrong with the word don't? It's spelled correctly. Well, I mean, it is spelled correctly, but they forgot the apostrophe between the N and the T. So I got to add that back in. I don't think we will make the town. Hang on. Okay. Fix that. We also fix this. I don't want to forget. Can you think of a reasonable place to stop between here and there? Okay. What's wrong with this there? See the little I? The little I is a man talking about belonging, but they're not talking about belonging in the sentence. They're talking about location. So I want to use the there that rhymes with where, and that is spelled Here. Okay. It would be even better if there was some fresh water nearby. Okay, so this there I fixed. If there's another there. Is this the right there? They was? That doesn't make any sense. That's not the right one. If there, I want this same there. If there was. So I'm going to have to fix that one. Now, again, you see, it caught the one mistake. It didn't catch the second mistake, even though it uses the exact same word. So you'd think it was aware of it, but it's not. All right, how many words have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh my goodness, I've missed some. One that's catching my eye right here, this word would. This is the wrong would. I want the one that's spelled this way. Okay. So let me go back to the beginning and take a look. Realize they weren't going to make it into the town as she had hoped. She began discreetly checking out the sides of the road, looking for possible paths that might lead to a more sheltered clearing out of the way of other travelers. Yep. Oh, out of the corner of her eye, she saw that Baylor was doing the same thing. She slowed her horse. Yep. Oh, I forgot to count that one. We fixed that too. And there was a comma we fixed too. Okay. I think we've got 10 now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, and there's my 10. Okay. So those are all the different mistakes I found. Okay. Yes, I put those in there deliberately because I'm the teacher, but a lot of those are the kind of mistakes that it's very easy to make in our writing, even when we're experienced, right? All right. Once you've finished editing and you're sure everything is as correct as you know how to make it, we get to the publishing stage. And the publishing stage is just basically, for me, you're going to send it to me. If you were a professional writer, you might send it to your editor first. Or if you're trying to submit a story to a magazine, maybe you're submitting it to the magazine. Remember that you can mail it, you can email it, you can fax it over. I've even had people who live in town just kind of walk over and say hello, which is fine too. Remember to include your name, the course name, and the assignment number, okay? I have a lot of students, like over 130 right now, and I've got 4 different courses, so it may not be instantly obvious which course and which assignment it is if you don't remember to put those things down, and it helps our secretary too. I know this is a big assignment, which is why I've spent so much time trying to explain it, because I think it was kind of a big leap. Just do the best you can and then hand it in, and then we'll move on to Unit 2. If there's anybody out there in the course who has not got the novel, which we're going to be studying intensely starting Unit 2, which will be tomorrow, please, please, please let us know that you need it, because it will be impossible to do the work in Unit 2 if you haven't got the novel. Okay? Thank you so much for showing up today, and I hope you have a good time finishing off your assignment. Let me know if you need some help and reach out to me, and I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Okay? Oh, hang on. I want to stop the sharing. There we go.